let's welcome Lisanne Steninson, a PhD candidate at Radboud University Medical Center in the Netherlands. Her research centers on the patient perspective and participation in clinical trials for inherited neuromuscular disorders, including RYR-1-RD. Ms. Steninson collaborates closely with patients and organizations internationally and will share her insights on the recent RYR1-related diseases clinical trial readiness survey.
Thank you very much. So hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking to you about the results of the RYR1-related disease international patient survey. First, Lina already introduced myself, so I won't add anything more to that, but I'm a PhD candidate in the Netherlands under the supervision of Nicole Voermans. You might already know, I've seen her. I have a master in biomedical sciences, and my PhD focuses on the patient perspective on trials and treatment in inherited myopathies. So it's about the experiences patients have had with the first clinical trials, and how patients, the impact of the disease and how patients live with their disease in the best way possible. I've never been to the RYR1 scientific workshop and family conference before, so it's my first time being here. But I have worked together with the RYR1 Foundation on an article about the results that was presented 3 years ago. It was a survey initiated by the RYR1 Foundation about the impact of the disease, and it was presented by Drew. And 3 years ago, also patient testimonials were presented. So we made an article together with the RYR1 Foundation on the survey results and the testimonials, and it's now published in a medical scientific journal. The current survey that I'm going to talk about is a follow-up on this last study. It's more about the experiences and expectations of clinical trials that I will talk about more. So as you all know, there's still no curative treatment for RYR1-related diseases, but there are currently multiple preclinical studies ongoing. We also have a natural history study ongoing in the Netherlands, and there are more. And there have been 2 clinical trials so far, with a follow-up on RYR coming in 2026, I believe. And this calls for optimal trial readiness on the trial sites. And with trial readiness, I mean being well prepared to start a trial. And this includes identifying patients that can be recruited, a selection of the most appropriate outcome measures, and availability of study sites with well-trained personnel. And the patient community can contribute to this by assessing patient-reported preferences and expectations of future trials. And with this study, we aim to provide the patient community, the pharmaceutical companies, and researchers with area of research that are meaningful to patients. So the aim of this survey was to investigate the patient-reported disease burden, what people with RYR1-related disease and their caregivers expect from future clinical trials, and what would encourage them to participate. The survey was available for patients with a RYR1-related disease or caregivers. So when people were less than 16 years old, we recommended that they filled out the survey either together with their parents or that what was filled out by their parents. The survey was available in 6 different languages, in Spanish, Portuguese, French, German, and Dutch. It had a duration of approximately 45 minutes, and it was available from March 10th until May 5th, 2025. The survey was based on another survey in FSHD patients. We got approval to use the other survey, and we made our own adjustments to it, together with our research team that I will shortly introduce. It was adjusted and translated into the 6 different languages. It was also adjusted with the help of patients and RYR. They also helped us with their input on the survey. And it was shared through several platforms. It was shared through social media, within our own hospital, through the RYR1 Foundation, like some of you might have seen, and other national patient organizations, like the one in Germany, but also in Taiwan, and through social media, like I said. This is the study team that we were working with. We worked together with people from the RYR-1 Foundation, but also with people from other countries, so the United States, the Netherlands, Brazil, Germany, France. From each of the languages, we had a patient that helped us with the translation and with reviewing the survey. So it's a nice way in which we had this broad study team that helped, that we all worked together with on this study. Some of you who have filled out the survey might recognize these 16 parts on the left. That was what the survey consisted of. And together they all provide information on participant information, current management of the disease, thoughts and experiences of clinical trials, expectations of future clinical trials, and information about current condition. We have a lot of results. I will not go into all of them, but I will show these results in this order. So first I will show some participant information, information about current condition, thoughts and experiences of clinical trials, and expectations of future trials. And I'm doing it this way because it's the most logical way of presenting it in this order. So first of all, I will talk about the participant information. So we collected information about the participants that filled out the survey to get a better understanding of the representation of the people who filled out the survey. A total of 152 participants filled it out, 102 females and 50 males, so more females. People could either fill it out as a patient themselves, as a caregiver, or both. So we had 120 patients, 24 caregivers, and 8 people who were both a caregiver and patient. And on the right figure, you see the ages. So in the horizontal line, you see the different age groups, and the vertical line, the amount of people who were in that age group. So as you can see, it's a broad variety of different ages, most people being between 50 and 59 years old who filled out the survey. We also asked which countries people were living in. Most people lived either in the United States or in the Netherlands, which makes sense because those were the main ways through which we shared the survey. But we also have people from Germany, Mexico, and all other different countries. Also, a lot of countries in which one people filled out the survey. We're not sure why yet, but I think through all the different platforms that we did, also HCAI, it's like an international platform with healthcare experts, and they also, through that platform, it was shared for the Taiwan Foundation, so I think it explains that. Now, first of all, we looked at the type of diagnosis that the participants had. So most had a central core disease. And at what age they were given the diagnosis. So most of the participants either had it at birth or in the first years of life, but still a lot of participants that were diagnosed later into their adult life. So as you can see again, below the horizontal line shows again the different ages groups showing these results. On the next part, we ask information about the condition. Again, it shows us information about the participants themselves, but also provides us information about the disease and the disease burden. In this figure, we looked at the disease severity at different ages. So on the horizontal line, you see again the different age groups, and the percentage is on the vertical line. And the more orange-red, the more severe the age is. And I do want to comment on this figure that this does not show how the disease progresses over time. It just shows the disease severity of the participants that filled out the survey. So out of the people that were between 0 and 4 years old, most of them were either severely affected or moderately affected. So it's just to give us a representation of the disease severity in these groups. Oh yeah, and I do want to say with these results, I want to see if I can make it a bit more interactive. I don't know if people are affected here or not, but if you feel like you want to comment on any of these results or want to add anything, just either raise your hand or let me know, because I am curious to see if you have similar thoughts. But I also ask your opinion maybe once and then. Next, we looked at the change in the disease severity over time. The more red the bar is, the more worse the disease got over time, and the more green then it got improved. So as you can see, in the last 6 months, most people had no change in their severity over time or minimally worse. And in the last 3 years, it got a bit more minimally worse, much worse for most people. And I think that makes sense that in 3 years, the disease severity differs more than in the last 6 months. What we also see is some people in green that have improved over the 6 months or 3 years. And I think that can either be because, for example, people have used therapies that are working for them, or maybe children who have grown up and developed, making that people also improve in their disease state over time. Next, we looked at people's walking ability. And on the horizontal line, you see the percentages of individuals. And as you can see, about 12% of the individuals were unable to walk and completely wheelchair dependent. About 40% were not at all affected in their walking ability. And the others had to use certain aids when walking, either inside or outside, depending on their situation. For the next part, sorry? Oh, yeah. Wait, I should shift you.
In the previous slide, can you put it back?
Yeah.
There's a big difference between the first and the second one. Not at all affected, or I can walk independently with aids and do not use a wheelchair.
Yes. You mean it's a big difference between the one or the other?
I think a lot of us are in the middle of those two.
Yeah, we're really thinking about how can we make clear differences between these things, and there are also several questionnaires on this, but we try to make it as much distinctive that people could fill out either one or the other, but I can imagine that people still feel like, okay, maybe I'm a bit more in both, you mean? That you're not sure in which one you're in? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to point out, that it's not like always one way or the other. That maybe we can be a little bit more distinctive into these things, because it was something that we were struggling with. How can we make, and it was now like a questionnaire with sometimes open questions, sometimes closed question. And when it's a closed question like this, yeah, it's difficult when you're maybe not seeing yourself in the one or the other. So it is a good thing that you point out. And we're still working on writing the report of this, so it's definitely something that we can keep in mind when analyzing these results. Yeah. For the next part, we looked at, we asked patients, what symptoms do you experience that cause difficulties in daily activities? And I was wondering if you're thinking like this for yourself now. I don't know if people are affected here, but do you experience symptoms yourself? What is like the main symptom that you experience that cause difficulties for you in your daily life? Does anyone want to comment on this, or?
In my case, just weakness and difficulty, like I cannot run or jump.
Yeah, I think I can show the results. It is something that we see a lot, so I can quickly explain this graph. So the more green the bar is, the less difficulty a certain symptom causes, and the more red, the more difficulty it causes. And we put the symptom with the most difficulty on top and going through the bottom. So I think people reported general muscle weakness, fatigue, energy and endurance as like the top symptoms. I think, can you relate to this? And then also impaired mobility. I think it's something that we hear a lot, right? Especially general muscle weakness, fatigue. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah, I think most of them are important symptoms. And this is just the way people could rank it. Shall I go on to the next one? Yeah. Oh, maybe the microphone? I was, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was also kind of based on like the FSHD study, and we were thinking about, do we put it off or not? But we still found it an interesting symptom to keep in mind to see if it is something that people experience. But I think it is expected that it is lost. I think we were thinking, okay, what symptoms do we really put off based on the FSHD study? But yeah, I don't think I've seen much impaired vision either. But you don't see it at all in your clinic, or less? Oh, sorry. Mm-hmm. Oh, is it not working?
I forgot to turn it on. So obviously impaired vision happens for different reasons, different ages, but I never thought of it as related to RYR1. I guess you're trying to get at whether impaired vision is just contributing in addition to the difficulties. And so I guess it's a good question to ask because it's not directly related to RYR1, but it still affects day-to-day activities.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm glad that you did, because it puts it in perspective, right? That the weakness is really different from the vision, but it does still contribute. So.
Thank you very much. That's good to take into account. Yeah, of course.
I was curious about the not being able to run, and if you saw any correlation with age, because when I was a child, that was really important to me, but as an adult, I've adjusted my life where, okay, I can't run, but it doesn't affect me on a daily basis. But I would have said if I was, 10, 12, that would have been a huge problem. So I didn't know if you did any correlations with any of the diseases in age.
Yeah, that is a really good point. We've not done much correlations for now. I've only looked at to see if there were differences in different countries, but not at ages and, for example, things like this. So that is something that we can still look at. We've not done it yet so far, but it is very interesting, I think. Yes.
Is there a reason that heat sensitivity is not listed on here?
No, that's a good point that we did not add here, but it's definitely something important. Yes, thank you. I'll make some, Okay, I'll make some notes of this as well for myself. In the next question, we asked if people had thinking of their condition, what concerns they had for the future. And again, it's shown in a similar way, in which the more green, the less concerning it was for patients, and the more red, the more concern it caused. And again, showing the most concerning things on the top, going all the way to the bottom. And people mentioned losing independence, not having the energy to work or live as I want to, losing mobility. These were all mentioned as the most important concerns people had for their future. And again, these were all closed questions. I also have some open question coming up. But this again shows the order in which people felt about these concerns. Financial concerns was here put last. We also looked at the different countries, but I couldn't see any distinct differences. But yeah. Let me go to the next one. For the next part, we really looked at the thoughts and experiences that people had for trials, because that was also the main focus of this study. So first of all, we asked whether people had ever participated in a trial. And 30 people have participated and 122 not. But I think considering that there have been 2 clinical trials so far, it's still an amount of people, so still 30 people have participated. Then we asked, out of these 30 people, if they experienced this positive, neutral, or negative. 18 people have had a positive experience in their trial, 8 neutral, and 4 had a negative experience. And finally, we asked all of the participants if they would consider participating in a trial. So most of them, 106 people, would consider participating. 41 people were still unsure about it, and 5 would not consider participating in a trial. Next, we looked at facilitators and barriers in clinical trials. So first, we looked at what are facilitators, so what are factors that would encourage people to participate in a trial. And it's shown in a similar way in which red means not encouraging, green means most encouraging, and the most encouraging factors are put on the top, going all the way down to the bottom. So access to the new therapy is for people the most encouraging factor to participate, having the trial results when published, being seen by a specialist center, benefits to the RYR-1-related disease community. These were all seen as the most facilitators factors in participating for patients. And then we also looked at, okay, what are barriers in participating? So what would discourage you from participating? And it's shown in a similar way, with the green being less discouraging, the red being the most discouraging factors, and then going all the way from the most discouraging factor on the top, going to the bottom. And the fear of side effects is seen as the most discouraging factor, so the biggest barrier in participating. Having a clinical trial facility far away, which I can especially imagine can be a problem here in the United States when you have a bigger country, trial facilities farther away. It's also something that we've heard in other interview studies, that people had to take, having to travel, having to take time off work, are all things that impact their life and are factors that can be discouraging to participate. And we looked at these facilitators and also the barriers to see, okay, what kind of things would hold people back from participating, so we can look, okay, are these things then we can take into account when designing a future trial, which is also what the next part is about. It's about practical aspects of trial participation, in which we ask, what would you be able to participate in? As you can see, people were able to, or were willing to participate in most of these functional tests, but both the muscle biopsies were factors that people would participate in the least. But I think it makes sense. I've also heard that these days from people. It is something that is, of course, more invasive. So I think it makes sense that it shows back in these results. People are willing to do most of these things, but the muscle biopsies are more of a barrier. And we also looked at all of these things, like how long would you be willing to lie in an MRI? How long would you be willing to travel? Would you require an overnight stay? Would you prefer that or not? But we had a lot of results, but I do have them. And once the article is published, I can all share that with you. But it's a bit much to share now for here. But it's not that we only looked at these things, but also we went more into depth on these, just so you know. And also, if people were willing to do a muscle biopsy, how many, those kind of things. The next part was about information and updates. So we asked, how do you receive information about RYR-1-related disease topics, and also how do you receive information about clinical trials? So most of the people got the information either through the RYR-1 Foundation or their own national patient organization, which I think was what was expected. A small 20% did not receive any information. And the next question was, do you find this information sufficient? 78% found the information that they received sufficient, 19% did not. So now we also ask, okay, but what if people did not find it sufficient? What could be improved? We got a lot of answers. This is like a small summary of some of the quotations that people said. And what was most being said, that people wanted more updates. Either they wanted more, for example, I wish that my doctor would provide more education to me, I would like to get more emails about the study, more regular updates from the physician. Someone mentioned that we would like to connect with more people in a similar situation. More information. So that was, I think, the main answer that came out of this. People want more information and also more updates from their physician. The last part was about expectations of future clinical trials. And the first thing we asked, okay, what lost ability would you like to regain? So if there's something that you would be able to do again, what would that be? And this is again a small summary of what was said. A lot of different answers were given: the ability to run or walk greater distances, being more active or mobile, get up the floor again. I also really saw a lot of answers that said climbing the stairs, gaining muscle strength and endurance, being less fatigued, sleeping without ventilation, elimination of pain. I think it really shows, on the one hand, people really would like to have more muscle strength and more the bodily functions back, but also other factors that impact their daily life. And I was wondering, is this something that you recognize? Do you miss anything that you see on here? Maybe something to think about. You don't have to respond if you don't. Yeah. No, that's also good to hear. Yeah. Okay. Next, we looked at, okay, what will be the most important outcome for people of a new therapy? Maybe someone wants to give a response to what they would find for them, the most important outcome? Yeah. Also relating to the last slide. Respiratory. Yeah. This was again a close question, but I think some of the things are very relatable. Regaining strength was mentioned as the most important outcome, stopping the progression of the disease, reduction in fatigue, improved mobility. So it's again from most important to least important. Yeah, most important are mentioned on top. And then we see the facial muscles here again on the bottom also included. So on the one hand, you have like the most important outcomes on more like a medical way, but we also asked what social benefits are more important for you in a therapy. And in that question, people mostly, I think almost, yeah, all of them were considered important, but increased independence was seen as the most social benefit, participating in sports and hobbies, less fear of falling, attending work or school, and people also had the option to fill out other options, and then they said decrease the isolation, loneliness, feeling more comfortable in my own skin and living life, better endurance to remain seated at a table during a dinner out. And someone else mentioned that the biggest problem was anxiety, and that might be less. Are there any other social benefits that you can think of that are not listed here, or can you also recognize in what is being said here? Yeah, and I think it's important, an important way in which we want to, show that it's a therapy. Not only is there, it's not only about bodily function, but it really concerns a patient's overall functional level. So it's also on the social way, on the mental way. There are more slides that also, I think, represent the same. But then it's more than only bodily functions. So that was the last result slide that I'm going to show you, and I think I like this result. I like this slide a lot. We asked patients what would be topics that you want future research to focus on. It was an open questions. We had a lot more answers, but this is again a quick overview. So, on the one hand, we see answers like stopping the disease, cure, improving strength, but also other things like the mental aspects, helping patients cope with their condition, impacts on parents and patients' livelihoods, pain, sleep, respiratory function. So I think, again, this shows the big variety, like the bodily functions, the strength, a cure, but also the mental aspects and the social aspects and all these other ways in which people, that impacts people's life and that people want future research to focus on. This was a study that was done, I think it was a nice way that we did this study. We worked with the patients and the patient organizations from the start together on the topic. And there are different terms that explain this, but one of these terms is PPI. It's called Patient and Public Involvement in Research. And it explains different ways in which patients or the public can be involved. So I think most of us know participation, in which patients are involved as a study participant in a study. But there are also more ways, like engagement. Engagement is more when researchers inform patients or people about a trial, usually after it's been completed, or when people inform themselves about a trial. For example, by visiting a conference, like you're all doing now, being engaged in the research. And then there's also involvement. And involvement is more working in partnership with researchers about to set up a trial, conduct it, evaluate it, and there are many steps of a trial in which people can be involved. It can start from formulating a clinical problem and a research question, to the study design, to the study itself and the results, interpreting these results, formulating conclusions, writing the report, disseminating the results. And people don't have to be involved in all of these steps, but it is a way to show that while we often think of people as participants in a study, there are more ways and more phases in which people can already be involved in a trial. And that's something that is considered as more and more important also by the FDA and the EMA. And I think that this study also shows a nice example of which the patients and the patient community was involved at the beginning of this study, and we will continue collaborating with them on this study also once we're now analyzing the results and writing the reports. Because in the study we really looked at to get a clear understanding of the burden of the disease and also about the thoughts and experiences that people have had with trials. And I think that's something that's very important to be to have a clear understanding of when you want to design a well-structured trial. Also for negotiations with the FDA and the EMA, I think it's very important to have the disease burden defined very clearly, because even if a trial of a treatment shows positive results in a trial, it still needs to be approved in order to be available. Also for negotiations with health insurers about reimbursement. And I think with these results, on the one hand, we have the expectations and the thoughts on trials and the burden of the disease. I think that information is very important to justify the trial design and also to show that an expensive treatment is worth the effort. What we're wanting to do next is we're now currently working on writing the article to see if do we want to do more analysis, like for example more correlations on these results, and then we want to submit it to a medical scientific article, so then it's available also for other researchers and clinicians in the field. We would also like to see if the article is finished, if it can be, for example, be put on the website of the RYR-1 Foundation, so it's also available, more available for the patient community, and it can also be come in handy in negotiations with pharmaceutical companies in the future. And we also still want to see if we can get a meeting with RYR to inform them about these results. It's something that we've done before when we did a qualitative study and then informed the pharmaceutical company about these results to make them aware of it. And I think it's also an interesting way in which we can think about, okay, we made an article on the study that was presented 3 years ago. We did now a study together with the patients. Is this something that we can do again in 3 years on the next conferences, working together with the patients on a topic that is important for them? And then to finalize, I wanted to show the slides of everyone in the study team again. I would like to thank all the patients that participated in the survey, the RYR-1 Foundation, and all the other team members that contributed, some of who are sitting here right now, Brantley, Orlando, and Sophia. So thank you all very much. Yes, of course.
So one thing that I noticed a lot, at least in the phase 1 trial that we ran, was a lot of parents were participating in the trial to help their kids. And I was wondering if you were able to capture something like that in the survey, to specifically participating in, getting muscle biopsies in a trial, not necessarily for them, but specifically for their young child who has the same condition.
Yeah, I think the only actual question that we asked why people wanted to participate, what was seen here, but we have, let me see if I can find it. I'm not sure, but we have done other studies in which we also, we've done a focus group study. Oh, sorry? Yeah, but now it's still kind of like a closed question. And we have done other qualitative studies before in which we also asked about these motives. And then for my kids was one of the main motivators. And what was also an important message on that study, and I think it still is what Nicole also has mentioned, I think at least one time during these days, that it's very important. It's not, I think, the main goal of this study, but it was of another study, that it's really important to clearly state that the trial is still not a treatment, and that it's very important to have these motivations clearly, because of course we hope for a cure, but it's still an experimental treatment, that it's uncertain. And also in the last interview study, for the next generation or for children was seen as a very big motivator, and here it's just, I think, slowly just mentioned as one of these things. But if it's an important topic, yeah. Any other questions or response? Do you overall recognize these results? I think, yeah. Is it on?
Hello. I just want to say it's a great job, and I love what we're doing, and collaborating the experts and doctors with the patients, because scientists and experts, they're expert in science, but the patients, we're the experts on experience, and I think it's very important that we have both to have a better outcome. So that, y'all aren't going into your research or your planning on the treatments blindsided. You're able to hear what we want and what we need for our lives. Because at the end of the day, it's benefiting us, the patients. So I hope that we can continue this, with every year, with every conference, and, just keep trying to get it further and further worldwide and get more participants, because I think it really is important and it really is beneficial for everybody.
Thank you very much, Becky. It's very inspiring. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, Sophia.
Are you communicating with the people that do the trials to see if the people that answer the surveys might be a good element to participate in a trial?
You mean if we communicate these results back to the people executing the trials? And it is something that we want to do, at least that's why also we want to schedule a meeting with RYR-1, at least informing the pharmaceutical companies, and also by getting this into a scientific article in a medical scientific journal, it also reaches the physician, researcher, clinician community, and therefore we hope to inform them about these results as well. And I think also really informing the pharmaceutical companies, maybe sharing it through the website, all these different platforms in which we want people to inform them about this.
Yeah, I think that, you know, my personal opinion is that the participation is motivated by, I want to get cured, I want to get better, I want you to tell the people that are in charge of, you know, making the drugs or doing the trials that we're here and that, you know, we're willing to participate in however we can to help the process move forward.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think it's really important. There was also another study that we did that communication is so important before starting a trial, during a trial, and also after a trial has ended and results might have been either positive or less. We've also seen that in FSHD, a study has stopped because the therapy was not as effective, and then people really missed having this trial stopped and they didn't hear anything anymore. So I think communication is key in this, before, during, after, throughout the whole process of a trial. And I think that's very important also to communicate these expectations beforehand, during, afterwards. Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think it's some of these things people may implicitly already know, but I think it's very important to also get this into, have this scientifically written down in an article, available as like proof that it really is important, and that it, yeah, on that way.
Is there a way, because I know you've had those who fill out the survey, you have their email addresses,
Yeah.
correct? Is there a way to follow up with those same people over time?
Yeah, I think it also was like an option if people wanted to receive information after the study has ended. And at first we wanted to see if we could do it completely blinded, that people did not need to fill out their email address, but it had some technical issues. So the data it's all anonymous, but we want to inform the patient afterwards as well. And I think it was also an option if people wanted to receive information. I have explicitly some results on them, but I think we're going to inform everyone once they've participated. And that's why it's also nice if it would be shared with the RYR-1 Foundation and with all the other because we worked with the German patient organization, Susanne Stark, Orlando shared it through his platform, so RYR-1. So I think once it's open, it would be very nice if we can also share it back again through these platforms and also with the patients themselves. Yeah, and I think that's very important as well, yes. That's why I was also very happy that I could be presenting the results here. Nou, then thank you all very much.